Hello and welcome back around the bonfire. It's the show that's going to take a short 15-minute break, maybe 2 minutes before the halfway point of the episode. Does that sound about right, Tim? I feel like we're trying to keep the themes consistent here as we move along. We're talking some Chicago Fire football, including a win. Tim and John, it's the same old, Tim. How you doing?
Same old, same old. I mean, first time that the Fire have won 6 games in a row since 1998. So same, like old is maybe doing the heavy lifting in that one, man.
Tim, I was told that when you sign a world-class player, this is what's to be expected. Okay.
Yeah, we can talk about Lewandowski some, but you know what, like you can argue with how it came in. Like, look, I will talk about this. It was an ugly win. I think that makes it beautiful in this context. It really does.
Look, you don't love to constantly be squeaking out victories, but you do love to constantly be squeaking out victories, I suppose, right? It started early. Chicago Fire pulling off the 2-1 victory over Antoine Griezmann, a.k.a. Tony Griezmann, and Orlando City. Ironically, on a night the Fire were not the team wearing red, and Orlando was. I did like those, but it threw me off for a good chunk of the game. I would be lying if I said it.
Yeah, I mean, like the Fire never played, what was it, the Lions or whatever the team name was in the 80s. So that wouldn't have been something that they encountered. The eras were a little bit different. I mean, I guess cool to Orlando for not like inventing some fake purple team that could have played in like the 90s or something like that. You know, I mean, like some of it, like legitimately, some of the like quote unquote archived kits, like the team was founded in like 2020 or like, like sometime in the past decade, and there's no antecedent like NASL team or like pro team from the area that anyone would remember. Like, so you're just,
we talking
up.
Inter Miami just saying, all right, let's do the Dolphins. Does that sound good to everybody? Perfect.
Yeah, because what sucks is it's not like Miami didn't have, history in there. I mean, especially because like they literally built the stadium that they were in until this year on the site of like one of what is arguably like the more historic soccer stadiums, like one of the only soccer focused stadiums in the country before MLS was around. But hey, what can you do?
Yeah, look, I will say 2 matches in a row, that may be the best shirt I've ever seen the team wear. You know how fond I am of the confetti kits, but it's a darn good looking shirt. I'll leave it there. It comes off nicely on screen. How about that?
It should just be the default for, I mean, like, I don't know, like I think that teams should have one shirt that like has details change over time. So like sickos can like see it and like they can make some excuse to sell some, more jerseys to people. But like, I think there should be one kit that should be basically the same forever. Arguably like the home red kit is probably the one that you'd want.
Yeah, that's
like,
what I was going to say.
Stripe in the middle. But I mean, still, I think you can do like a trademark look of like big, bold stripe across the chest and, change the colors around it and change some of the details around it and still do something fresh and different with it. And like, why can't it be the Fire's like visual identity? Other than the fact that it's also, especially with white and like that darker blue, the white caps visual identity.
Yeah. Well, look, it all comes back to the deal with Adidas, right? And it's ridiculous that not all 30 teams get a third shirt every year and all that kind of stuff. And that's the answer, right? If you really want to get into the nitty gritty, it's you have your classic home, your classic away, and then every year you get a different third shirt that you can do whatever you want with. I will say, I saw this on Reddit. I don't know if you and I have talked about it. Somebody from the club confirming that the new away shirt that is coming sometime next year is modeled after the 05-06 light blue Chicago flag shirt that they wore against Inter Milan AC Milan years and years ago. So very cool. Excited for that. I'm going to leave it there. We don't need to talk about jerseys anymore.
When the Fire invented the Red Stars kit.
Dude, it's there's an article that I wrote from February going through all the possible variations of what it could be. There's some cool ones in there. I would recommend going back and finding it if you can.
Yeah. We should repost that somewhere because it's good. It's worth reading.
Yeah.
If you stuck with us through this long and talking about kids. Some people wish that we talk about kids all day. Some people wish we never.
You know what? New show.
Everyone's going to be unhappy. Everyone's going to be unhappy because we did talk about them, and we're going to move on.
All right. Let's before we do this, Tim, I want to maybe spend 2 seconds on news, right? Philip Zinkernagel missing the game, Sergio Orahel missing as well. Post game from Greg Berhalter, it sounded like that was more precautionary for Phil. We saw the recalling of Sam Williams, which seems to imply Sergio will be out for at least Saturday, and then maybe we'll be back. Anything you want to kind of fill us in on there?
Yeah, Sam Williams' loan sends him back on next Monday, so it's literally it was for these 2 games. He didn't play in this one. The question is the next one. We'll get into the Red Bulls preview a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Greg continuing to experiment with players in the starting 11. And my understanding is that reporting is correct, that what we were told is that it's largely precautionary. Same thing with Sergio. Now, obviously, things cannot look, you don't necessarily know how bad things are until you get certain tests done and stuff like that. That's why the Imbokazi news was kind of a slow roll, but it looks like everyone should be fine. Maybe not for Saturday, but certainly going forward.
Yeah, hopefully for Tuesday when the Fire take on Monterrey and Hugo Kuipers. The only other piece of news I'm going to throw out here, because somebody asked in the comments on the last episode, and I am a man of the people, Tim, third designated player spot, it seems like Goretzka is still the main target. Anything you can enlighten us with there? More of the same?
That's my understanding, that he's the main target. I know that the team has been evaluating backup options. I mean, they will continue to. I'm a little concerned with what it looks like the transfer strategy is based on different pieces that I've heard from here and there, which, largely what I'd heard from people that were outside of the Fire's camp, let me put it that way, is that Lewandowski and Leon Goretzka's, directly have spoken, as well as some of their, people in their camps, because Lewandowski certainly has one of those, which is fairly unique in Fire history. And basically Goretzka indicated that he wasn't particularly interested. He did recently see Chicago for that friendly that the German national team played in June. So it's not like he hasn't seen the place. It's not like, and German players in general were raving about that stay, about the location, about the city, about all of it. And it was a really good atmosphere at Soldier Field. So put on the best show, I think, that Chicago could have for Goretzka in his visit in June. And if he said he's not interested, I mean, look, if the idea is swooping a guy at the end of a transfer window because an MLS is open later than it is most places, I'm not sure that that's the guy that you want. At the same time, a lot of people do adjust and end up, playing well. And so we'll see. But it's certainly a risky transfer strategy. And I'm still not convinced that if I was getting someone, it would be someone with his profile.
Yeah, we haven't talked about it because there's been so much going on, right? But it's been incredibly quiet. There's been no real motion on any moves, at least publicly. And we're standing just a few weeks from the end of the window now, and the Fire, Greg Berhalter said a few weeks ago, would expect to see multiple more moves, haven't done anything.
The numbers seem to have been indicating 2 to 3 moves in total. Lewandowski is 1, and so that's 1 to 2 in total. Past that, I think that they've been evaluating some things. I wouldn't be surprised if the fact that Sam Rogers got a start last weekend was partly a test to see how he was fitting in with the squad after not really getting MLS time for a while, and evaluating whether a center back, at least for 6 months or a year or whatever, was going to be part of it. And I mean, I think Rogers played well, so I think that answers that one.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Well, let's walk through the game that was, because I think there's maybe some directions we can take in this conversation from that. As I said before, Chicago Fire ends up winning 2-1 over Orlando City and Tony Greasy Man. A game that, Tim, you said it was sloppy. I think that might be underselling it a little bit, but it got off to a fast start.
I said it was ugly. I didn't think I said it was sloppy. You said sloppy. I said ugly.
They are in ways synonymous, but it got off to a fast start. Puso Dithejane, unsurprisingly, opening the scoring in just the 4th minute. A really nice assist from David Poreba, who made his MLS debut in his first MLS start. So fantastic to see that performance from him. There was then a lengthy stoppage towards the end of the first half. The teams came back, played about 5 minutes, and then kicked off the second half immediately thereafter. Robert Lewandowski eventually scores the winner off a penalty that he did draw. So nice to not only be able to draw the penalty, but have somebody confident they can convert it. The Fire then hold on despite some tests from Orlando late, including a free breaking run from Antoine Griezmann shut down by Jonathan Dean. I had to mention that one. Look, overall, I think the story is similar to the game against Portland. It wasn't exactly what you would have wanted to see in a vacuum, but given that this makes 6 straight, it's hard not to feel good about the result.
you can't argue with the results, right? And I think part of my takeaways, and by the time this is up, my analysis will finally be up. If I have still been kind of chasing my tail for the past week, but the margins in MLS are thin, right? And the margins between MLS and Liga MX teams are you know typically thin. Like Necaxa was maybe a little bit less of a test than some of the others. Um, and look, there are going to be close games. They will all kind of be close in one way or another, even if the scoreline doesn't reflect it. And the Fire have good teams that win hardware, win those close games. And the Fire have been doing that. And they've been doing it at a time that they've been figuring stuff out and they've had multiple moving pieces and stuff like that. So it's not maybe ideal, but it's really, I mean, if this is not going to be the ideal state, this is as good as it's going to get for a team that's trying to figure things out.
Yeah, look, we could talk to death, I think, about the performances Puso Dithejane has put in. He was awarded man of the match after the game last night. I do kind of want to start and maybe focus on that back line, right? You mentioned Sam Rogers playing well in his limited action. Limited action, it was a game. But Jack Elliott now 6 straight full 90s. Joel Waterman has stepped into that role really, really nicely. And another solid performance from Jonathan Dean and Andrew Gutman. Maybe not their best we've seen, but it's for a piece of the team that felt like it could be a major disaster when Mbokazi, goes out for the year. It really seems like that back line has started to make all the difference in the world as the season has gone on.
So I'm going to take a slightly different tact with that. I think that we did see some good plays both from Jack and Joel. I think that both of them also had some mistakes and that led to some issues, right? I mean, and they're not concern free. What I've been saying all along is that when you see a defensive line that starts performing at this level, what's really going on around it is the team's shape is getting better and more predictable, and they're getting help from the midfield. And I think that's what we've seen. And I think that kind of goes back to players we talked a lot about last time. Anton Soletros playing well, Jay Davila playing well, Poreba playing very well in his MLS debut. Robin Lod coming in late in this one. Well, not, with an hour left, but late in terms of it was 2.5 hours after 3 hours after kickoff at that point. So look, it's not perfect, but it just has to get results, and that's been what it's doing. And they've been getting some good plays in the interim, and I think that's what matters. I'm a little concerned. I don't know if you noticed this. It looked like Joel Waterman was not afraid to use words while on the back line to his own teammates. And I don't know if that's frustration. I don't know if that is just him saying what he's seeing and like that's what he's supposed to be doing. And I don't know if it's something more than that, but it's not something I'm entirely unconcerned with. But I mean, like I said, he had some good plays, and as long as the team is getting victories, like that's all that really matters.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it probably, that's one of those things that I think from the outside can be incredibly hard to judge, right? Because we don't know exactly what type of relationship these players have with each other and maybe how they're taking those things. I will say, I think what we've noticed throughout this season, we've talked about it at different points, is a team that is not afraid to call each other on the crap, right? Like this is, we saw it with Philip Zinkernagel and Robert Lewandowski in his first game, kind of sitting him down, not sitting him down literally, but post-game, standing him on the field and saying, here's where I need you to be, here's where I expect you to be. We saw it even, same thing last night from Robert Lewandowski to Jonathan Dean when he didn't see him across the box. Like, that to me I understand the concern, and it's not unfounded. I think that could also be the sign of it's a functional and healthy locker room of, you're able to kind of call your teammates out and say, hey, what's going on here? This is the adjustment you need. This is what you need to be doing. Why aren't you doing it? And I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate there, just to be candid, but I don't think it's an unreasonable stance. More just maybe depends on how the form is, right?
Yeah, I think that's all fair. And again, like I'm not really in the locker room. Like I'm in the locker room for brief moments, and it's not like everyone knows that we're there. So it's not like we're native inhabitants there by any stretch of the imagination. But from everything I've known, it seems like the team is remaining, coherent and united. And that has been one of the big things that's changed over the past 18 months or so. And that's what you want to see.
Yeah, no, 100%. Tim, I don't want to spend a ton of time just because we do have to talk Red Bull too. I think that the two big questions.
That was almost a double entendre with who Michael Bradley is playing for the Red Bulls of Red Bull as well, or also, and Red Bull 2, the MLS Next Pro team. Because a lot of guys that were not getting MLS minutes until this year have been doing that.
Too true. And hey, who knows? Maybe somebody else who we saw in MLS pretty recently too, if some of these reports are to be believed. Maybe we'll talk about that. Maybe we won't. We'll see how real that is later. No, but I was going to mention, look, I think outside of drawing and obviously converting the penalty, which I suppose is all you can ask a striker to do, right? Be responsible for and then score a goal. It was a tough. It feels like it's been a tough string for Robert Lewandowski. We saw Jonathan Bamba return to the lineup last night after his illness as well, with the absence of Philip Zinkernagel. And again, some good things from Jonathan Bamba, at times being very dangerous vertically, but ultimately falling back to kind of the big snip that we've known from Jonathan Bamba consistently, which is he's great at progressing the ball and getting it down the field, but not necessarily getting it into the final box or getting it into the box for the final touch. And it's interesting to me to watch that game back and almost feel like the best attacker on the field is the 20-year-old that just got here and has only made a handful of starts. And maybe I'm being hyperbolic, but it's not nothing when your two DPs are not necessarily the standout guys on the day.
Yeah, I think part of it with Lewandowski is the team is still trying to figure out how to use them. Like, he was playing deeper, I think, than we would have seen him anywhere but here, as far as I can recall. I mean, I'm not going to say that I was watching every minute of him when he was playing in Poland before making it to Dortmund, or any minutes of him when he was in Poland before making it to Dortmund, if I'm being honest. But, we'll see. I think Bamba, he's just been unlucky. Some of it's in his head at this point. I honestly think there have been times that he's been close to a goal and he takes one too many touches or two too many touches or three too many touches. And that's one of the signs of a guy living in his own head way too much. He needs a goal. It doesn't matter if it comes off of some part of his body he's not intending to score with. It doesn't matter if it's some gift happens of a ball seems to fall out of nowhere into his lap in a great scoring position because some guy flubs on a clearance or something. He just needs a goal however it happens. And I think, and I'm hoping that we'll see improvement, but where he is right now, you're right. He has not been as effective on the pitch as Puso Dithejane, who's a player that is, shouldering more of the load than I thought we would expect him to at this point. And that's been great that he's been able to do that. But it would be good if the team was firing on all engines. And they've been firing on a lot of engines. It's just, you can start to look at some of these guys and say, are we getting the production out of this guy? Are we getting the production out of that guy? And it's fair.
Yeah, it's just, I don't want to talk this to death because we kind of already have, but it does feel like you have this incredibly dynamic and fast attacking group that progresses the ball very quickly and takes advantage of mismatches in that way. And then frankly, you have a guy who can't keep up. And it's not even just literally isn't fast enough. And he may very well be the most talented player on the field, but it doesn't matter if he's 15 yards behind the play and can't get in position to score. And what we found, I think, Tim, I mean, if you tell me if you feel differently, when he is in position and has the ball at his feet, he creates chances, right? Not always for himself necessarily. He seems more, I think, generous than people expected in that way. And even sometimes it's more just putting the shot on target to create the rebound. We've seen a few goals like that. It's more just kind of making sure that he's actually in the vicinity. And that's something I think we would both hope to see a little bit more on Saturday. I'm assuming he starts again because it doesn't seem like there's.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we did start seeing some minutes from Jason Shukaluk. And I think this Red Bull game, I mean, is this a good time just to start really getting into it?
That's what I was about to do, yeah.
Yeah. So look, I mean, when the Fire played the Red Bulls, or the New York, I guess as we're supposed to call them now, I don't know. They're no longer Red Bull New York, they're the New York Red Bulls, and that makes all the difference. They are not any longer the most distant offshoot of a global footballing empire powered by energy drinks. They are their own New York team once again, I guess, is the idea. So look, when the Rebels came to Chicago at Soldier Field, basically Michael Bradley did what he's been doing all year, which is play a bunch of kids, and sort of caught the Fire unprepared for what it was they brought. The Fire dominated possession. The Red Bulls were better with stuff like interceptions and counters. And they ended up winning pretty comfortably as a result. And I think, I'm not going to lie, some part of me suspects that with the amount of rotation that the Fire have had to do over the past few games and a must-win game against Monterrey uh, coming on Tuesday, because that is the singular most important game of the Fire season so far to date, right? Like, if they win that one, they have a chance to play for a spot in CONCACAF Champions Cup, right? Like, whether they win or lose the next game, the third place game would count, and so they have a chance to play for that. And so it wouldn't surprise me if we see the most rotation we've seen so far, and it wouldn't surprise me if maybe a little bit of it's going to be a revenge game from Berhalter, and that means playing a bunch of kids and showing him what the youth can do, and Jason Shukala could be very well part of that.
Yeah, look, at the other side of the coin, right, is Red Bull are following the team, the pattern of, how you phrase, like a lot of the early season sweethearts in MLS, the early season darlings, right? You look at what happened with San Jose, you look at what happened there. It's almost the inverse of what's going on with a club like Philadelphia, which is, wow, you started hot and now you haven't kept a clean sheet in 20 matches. You've lost 4 of your last 5. You're not exactly scoring goals. They haven't scored more than 1 goal in over a month at this point, as far as, or since before the break, if my memory serves me correctly. So, like, it's a very winnable game. My only concern,
they did beat Orlando 3-2.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're right. Yeah. I'm sorry. In those losses, is what I was thinking of. So outside of that game against Orlando, the only one they've won in their last 5. So I had that mixed up with all matches versus losses, but still not a team scoring goals consistently, except against the one team in MLS who seems to want you to score on them in Orlando. It feels like a game that's ripe for a 7th victory. That also tells me that it's probably a trap game. I don't want to be dramatic.
For some reason, the Bulls always feel like a trap game for the Fire. I mean, that's, maybe not scientific analysis, but is what I got. But look, I honestly think Michael Bradley's being given a long leash with this year, and I think that the idea of playing a bunch of kids and getting a bunch of minutes to a bunch of kids is going to pay dividends in the long run, right? So like, of the 11 Red Bull players that have the most minutes, so this isn't a starting 11. This is, there's going to be some, more midfielders and defenders, I think, than there are other positions. But of the 11 players with the most minutes so far, 7 of them are 23 or younger for the Red Bulls. I mean, and like, some of them are like, Audrey Mehmeti is a literal child. Like, he is not 18 years old yet, and he has the 4th or 5th most minutes on the team.
Is this
so?
Sorry, go finish your thought.
Look, he's building for the future, and the kids have looked good. I mean, legitimately really good. I mean, Mehmeti is someone that, all of us have talked about at some point, and like, he looks like one of those players that finally the U.S. is producing guys that you're excited about for the next World Cup cycle, as opposed to like, can we keep the same guys we saw last time healthy one more time? Somehow Cade Cowell is in that group of only being under 23. He hasn't played great, but he still can provide that chaos element, So
I was gonna say, it's kind of funny looking at their roster, because it's like, here are all these young, exciting players, and it's like Cade Cowell, Ethan Horvath, like, just guys who you're like, oh, I know who they are. It's just interesting.
It's sort of funny how the guys that are not in that young group, like, they end up with a normal seeming like average age, because you got like Ethan Horvath at 31 and Emil Forsberg at 34 and like Eric Max and Choupo-Moting at 37, and like, so like the average ends up looking pretty normal, but it's like a bunch of kids and a bunch of guys that are upper 30.
So I guess the question I have from the Fire side for you, Tim, you talked about, look, the potential of Jason Shukala finally seeing real minutes. Sam Williams obviously back from loan. I would expect him to at least be a substitute in this game, just purely on, Anton Saletros hasn't missed a minute in like a month and a half.
And despite being a Fire homegrown player, because the Fire bought his homegrown rights, he actually came up through the Red Bull system.
Game, yeah.
And I think, let's just put it this way. What I know about about Sam Williams is that there is no love lost between him and the Red Bulls organization. And so if you want a guy that's going to be motivated to do some stuff, and look, he's also a guy, we were talking about like, who is it now that Kellen Acosta is gone to sort of be the in-your-face guy that's going to play those psychological games and maybe try to get under people's skin. Sam Williams can do that, to put it mildly. So look, I wouldn't be surprised if he got real minutes. And if that may be part of what was, motivating the call up from the loan and, to get him some time with MLS just to see where he's at.
Yeah, well, 100%. The name I was going to ask you about, one that, gosh, there's at least one person on Twitter who's been angrily shaking the table about it. Christopher Cupps. It does feel like he's back with the team, right? He has been for a few weeks now. As far as I'm aware, should be ready to go. I think this would be a really interesting challenge for him, right? Just in terms of the opportunity, right? Against guys in roughly his age bracket.
And I think that, so since the Fire last faced the Red Bulls, Julian Hall, who was white hot and is in that group of like young, exciting players for the Red Bulls, has cooled down somewhat. And so their attack is less blunt. I think Cade Cowell has been less impressive than he was, in his first games back in MLS. So it's not as much of a challenge as it would have been not that long ago. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Cup started because we know Jack has been nursing an injury. I think it could be Jack and him. I wouldn't be entirely surprised if it was Joel and him because Greg is trying to get every rotation of guys that he, possibly can out to see how they look together, developing chemistry together. So that wouldn't surprise me. I wouldn't be surprised if Trudine got some real minutes in this one again. I mean, it seemed like it was kind of early for him in Leagues Cup in some ways, but he didn't look out of place.
I would agree, except I thought David Poreba played really well. And I would almost rather give David Poreba those minutes.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if it may be like a Poreba start and then you see Trudine later, one way or another afterwards. Because it would be an MLS debut. I mean, he did start in Leagues Cup, but it would be an MLS debut for Robert Trudine, whether he's starting or on the bench. So I think we could see all of it, honestly. I think it could literally be a like play the kids type game. And look, this is where, there'll be veterans in the lineup as well. But this also like helps the team test its structure, and see like how are things going? Like how are guys able to process what's been going on in training if they haven't been getting the game minutes? And I think we all want to see it extend the streak to extend to 7 games across all comps, which would tie the Fire's longest record in history if we ignore. Well, actually, no, sorry, it would break the Fire's longest consecutive victories in 90-minute streak because the 7th win of that 1998 stretch was with PKs at a time when MLS didn't have draws. So
we should go back to that.
What do you think MLS Next Pro is an experiment for? Please do not tempt them.
Do we want to talk about the playoff format, Tim?
Yes, let's talk about let's do 3 more minutes on this game if we need to. I think we've kind of talked it out. Like I think it should be a good game. I think it should be. It's going to be a bunch of kids playing, probably a bunch of kids, and then Robert Lewandowski and Eric Choupo-Moting looking in like the late 30s club together.
I think
hanging out with that.
I think that maybe the one-liner for this game, if you're new or if you're a new fan, is get ready to learn some new names, get ready to see some new faces, get ready to hear some names called you haven't heard before. And if you are somebody who's been around for a while, who's been watching the club, congratulations. This is a sicko kind of Saturday, at least from where we're sitting. Who knows? We could be totally wrong. Greg Berhalter only listens to what we have to say sometimes. I kid, of course. It's
only
all the
thing
time.
he consistently listens to is my hair care tips.
Okay, you guys have something to bond over. That's nice. Anyway,
yeah, it's us and the Mr. Clean guy.
I think it'll and shout out friend of the show Alex Campbell. Okay,
and Andrew Gutman and
Andrew Gutman and
Greg Broughton and
and hey Paul McCann. Shout out Paul McCann. Shaved his head for Andrew Gutman. There we go. Sorry, just having fun here. But yeah, anyway, it should be a good time. A lot of names to watch, a lot of people to take care of. Tim, in that vein, let's wrap things up. I want to ask you the question that we asked because the question begs to be asked. So, Tim, I'll ask you the question. Who you got and who's your spark?
I'm going to say Fire, like good revenge game. Spark. Let's say David Poreba. I
Oh,
liked what I saw from him. He has scored. I mean, his MLS Next Pro Golden Boot season was special. He was also MVP that year. Um, and this was supposed to happen in 2025. It's already been a dream week for him. Like he talked to us about that afterwards of like never in his wildest dream did he think he'd be starting next to Robert Lewandowski, and he's doing it in his first start and getting a point. But you know what? Like let's just continue that streak. And again, it's not like it's something that we haven't seen the guy being capable of.
mm-hmm. No, 100%. I like what you said. I'm going to default to my earlier stance of I think this is a trap game. I'm going to say 3-2 Red Bull. I think this could very well be the Fire are the better team, and maybe a mistake, maybe just a lucky bounce of the ball turns into, a goal or two for Red Bull on the other side. And hey, look, 6 wins in a row. There's only so much you can ask for, right? But if in terms of spark, I'm going to go Marin Haile Selassie. I expect him to start this game just because the depth on the wings is kind of shallow at the moment, at least in terms of guys who haven't played in the last few days. So I'm going to go Marin. He's been fantastic. I think he could really carve up this midfield and back line of Red Bull, and I mean, he's a fantastic player. I don't have any questions about him going out there and performing. So yeah, I could see
To be
him.
clear, he did get a half an hour against Orlando, but yeah, he did not start. And I
Yeah,
think
but in
that's part
terms of the
why.
guys available at that position, he
Yeah.
is the most well rested, I would say. Unless you're counting Phil, but the injury.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see Phil at all on Saturday.
Agree. Yeah, I think that brings us to a good place to wrap up. Thanks so much. Excuse me. Thanks so much for tuning in. Once again, as always, you can stay tuned, menofred97.com. It's where you can stay up to date with all the latest and greatest on everything Chicago Fire football. You can stay tuned on the socials, menofred97, anywhere and everywhere that matters. And finally, wherever you're watching this, if you can give us a like, a subscribe, a thumbs up, make sure that if you're not following us, you come back to it. Which, by the way, if you're not following, go ahead, especially if you're watching on YouTube. Go ahead and click that subscribe button. And if you're not watching on YouTube, go to YouTube, subscribe. We have the podcast in full video there. And also, it just helps with the reach, all that kind of good stuff. It goes a long way. I say all that to say thanks so much for being here. For Tim, for our illustrious producer, Austin, I'm John. Thanks so much for joining us around the bonfire. And come on, you men are red.